From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased joining me, Andrew Ryan. Andrew, thank you very much for making it on the show today despite the time difference. So first of all, again, thank you for being here. The way I love to do it, I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves because I believe no one can introduce himself or herself better than themselves. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. Andrew Ryan, founder and CEO of NewChip Accelerator and Astralabs. Been part of startups for the last decade. I've advised hundreds of companies. Now I'm into AI and everything going on in the world. So everything's changing minute by minute, day by day. So
Cool. To your point, whenever I have guests who speak about AI, I think I should release this as fast as possible because, if I keep the episode more than 2 weeks, it might be irrelevant at some point. But, Andrew, really, you have a very, rich career, I would say. But, the question that came to my mind is why you choose to be in an area which is, can we call it close to fintech? Is it like kind of a fintech, what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, I built an app company equity crowdfunding came out around 2016, and I built an app company around that because there were just so many platforms launching. Everyone and their mother was launching a platform to raise, help you raise money, and there were just too many of them. And so I built an aggregator app then to basically plug it into one place where you can go and find all the investments. You compare whether you're investing in this brewery or that app. And I built that. We got to a couple 100,000 users, over 100 million invested through the app. So it was highly successful. And the industry kind of had a stalemate, right? It took us, like a decade just to get that passed, the laws for that. And then, crypto kind of blew up and kind of entered our space. And then everything really slowed down. The regulators just said, hey, let's take a pause on this and let's sit on it for 20 more years before we do anything else. And that's kind of where it stayed. I mean, equity crowdfunding is still a great way to raise capital, and but it's kind of stagnated in terms of regulations. Nothing really changed. The amounts went up like $100,000. You can go from raising 1 million to like 1.2, but it's not really not much different. So built that app, sold that app to another company, and then moved into helping more companies and startups with Astralabs after that. So.
Yeah,
it was relative to, I guess to answer the question, it was relative to fintech in that I started in fintech, and when you're good at something, you tend to just do something similar in that space. And so.
Yeah, indeed. Now, speaking about this and fundraising, Andrew, still we are reading the report from last year, and we've seen like it was kind of a dry year, desert year, all the things. And it's been a global thing, actually. So how are your expectations for this year? And usually, I keep expectations and trends and predictions till end of the episode. But I wanted to start from here because we just mentioned about fundraising. So what are you seeing in this space? And do we expect 2024 to be better than 2023?
No, not at all. So Crunchbase just released their report. I mean, I've been saying this since last year. Fundraising is down. It's the worst it's been in 5 years. So we're back to like 2016, 2017 levels. And even then, when you look at the aggregate data, the number of companies getting funded is much less. There's a lot more companies that they're vying for the same amount of capital. I mean, there's whole swaths of like AI 1.0 that came out, right? And all of a sudden, Chat GPT and Perplexity and a few others just through all those, like all these companies got wasted. Like all that money just got thrown away because they got surpassed. Everybody was building something that now it's all open, and now they're surpassed. Now there's a new wave of AI startups, right? And so the tech industry is just moving so fast now. And if you can't iterate fast, you die. And so I think that capital still exists, and in 2024, companies will still raise money, but the competition is harder than ever. There's more competition than you've ever seen. The economy is in a dire place. I don't care what your politics are. I think that the world economy is just not. It's going to take a while to recover. We're in a recovery phase, at least for the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, tech is going to be in a it's gonna take time. And so I predict next year fundraising to be about stagnant to what it was in Q4. And so at about it was 50% down last year. I imagine it'll probably be about another 20% down this next year. So
Andrew, what are founders doing these days instead? Because are they bootstrapping? Are they, going to crowdfunding? Or are they coming to people like yourself, like angel investors? What's going in this space?
Well, so I think what's happened is it's just a reset. I mean, you see resets every 10, 15 years in general. I mean, the tech industry is pretty new. VC still pretty new. And so when you look at it like that, we're just going back to where we were before everyone and their mother had a VC fund. I mean, we hit peak VC. There's so many VC funds and everyone was in it. And there were so many LPs. And now we're back to where we were in the early 2000s, post-tech bubble. And I think that, nobody wants to admit it lively that this was another bubble. I mean, there's a lot of people that are on the public stock sphere, but not on the private sphere. And, I think that people are going to equity crowdfunding. That's a big one, but the valuations are too high. I mean, I was talking to an equity crowdfunding company just the other day, and they, hit me up. They're like, we want to do a 140 million valuation. 140 million. I was like, y'all have, $20,000 in revenue. You can't do it. Right? Like it doesn't even hit their mind, right? Like, I'm happy to help you, but and they always look to another company that raised at a higher valuation, but they don't know that company has 3 million in revenue, right? They just don't correlate these items. And when you go to the crowd with that, the crowd's smart. There's leaders in the crowd that there's angel investors, there's VCs, and they will give you, if you go out there looking for something that doesn't exist, like 140 million valuation with 20,000 revenue, you're just gonna get hit, right? And so you gotta have expectations right within the realm of reality. You got to go in with fair valuations for everybody, right? Just because the crowd doesn't want to pay more. They need to pay what everyone else is paying, right? The same valuations. So VCs exist, and they're deploying capital. But I mean, all of we got to a point where your cousin was giving you crypto advice, your barista was giving you crypto advice, and your barista also ran a venture fund. Like that's where we were peak tech. And it's just not there anymore. And so a lot of those funds are closing down. Even big funds are closing down. And, it's not like people have this idea that VCs hold on to the capital. They don't keep any money. Like they really, the way VCs work is they have LPs, they call for capital calls. And so that, if the LPs don't give you the money, then you got to close down your fund. And there's a lot of funds that aren't saying that right now because their LPs are saying, hey, we don't want to give you any more money and we're out. Right. And even though it's not in their contract, what are you going to do? If you send them an email, they don't want to send you money, you can't make investments. And if you can't, feasibly get them the money returned, because right now is actually a great time to invest. It really is a good time to invest because you're going to get really cheap valuations. So if you have capital and you got dry powder, as they say, people say VCs have dry powder. They don't have dry powder. They have to call and ask for dry powder, right? It's a very big difference. Angel investors have dry powder. They have real money they can invest. And so angel investors are getting really good valuations again. It's why angel investors always beat VCs. Angel investors on their record, right? They have a much better IRR than VCs, hands down. Always have, always will, because they get in early, they get in fair valuations, they get realistic valuations, and that gives them returns. Whereas VCs, it's kind of a measuring contest in some capacities of, oh, I got him here. Oh, let's get the valuation pushed up, right? And it really became this unregulated mess, I think, in terms of, a lot of peacocking and trying to express, oh, my company hit this valuation, oh, I'm doing this, and then they were using that to raise money for the next fund, and it just didn't work. It led to the bubble.
Yeah, actually, I was, also reading a book the other day about VCs, and it seems like the thing that founders, I don't want to say mistakenly because I don't think they do mistakes very easy, but they think that the only way for them to grow super fast is to go to a VC and follow what they see here and there. Or like we've got like Series A, Series B, D, E, whatever, and then things gonna go. Just this morning before I start the recording, I've seen an opposite thing where a company, they returned their money to VCs, and they unfortunately they fired some of their staff, and even the CEO has to step down and said, you know what, we're gonna go back to the way the bootstrapping option, and maybe seek for angel investors if we need it down the road. So I think Andrew, what happened?
Is that pitch.com?
Yes, it was pitch.com. Yeah, correct. So and this is like, it triggered something in my mind, and even myself, because part of the things I like to do in 2023 is to help connecting founders with investors. But I become skeptical, I would say, because you don't want to throw someone into the fire, right? So because and you can tell us about this experience, Andrew, also as well. Like it's not like easy to be controlled by someone all the time, and like what are some of the things that they will lose from founders' perspective when they get money from VCs? Because I think this is, people talk about all the good things, but few people talk about the, I'm not saying negative, but I would say the disadvantages.
Yeah, and one thing to add that I didn't hit on was that founders are moving to profitability, and so I was being really negative on the bubble side, but really that puts people back where they need to be. I mean, something I've been teaching for years, I've been pushing for years, is every founder I've ever talked to, I say push for profitability. Even if you're getting VCs, like be profitable, be a profitable business, so you don't have to do things right. Focus on revenue generation. The founder I was just talking to yesterday, he was like, well, shouldn't I put this money into raising money? I said, no, you just broke even. Put more money into driving more revenue, because if you have more profit, then like it's not like it's not going to be a negative. It's really highly positive. I mean, if you broke even last month, instead of putting $100,000 into this equity crowdfunding raise, let's put that money into more advertising, growth, and drive revenue to your business, because that's what investors really want to see. And then they kind of get lost in that. So, but to your point, I think that founders, they just, there's so many VCs that aren't honest, and they kind of come in and they're just telling you, oh, I'll help with this, I'll help with that. And then either they don't help with anything. They kind of just give you the money and ghost. I've had that experience myself. They're too busy. They actually, sometimes VCs will invest in you because they don't want to add value, because they're so busy and they kind of want to enjoy their life. And they're like, okay, this founder gets it. They're smart. They're really capable. And they just do that. Like VCs will say they don't do that, but they do that, right? They just, they give you the money, and then they just go enjoy their time in the Cayman Islands, traveling, going to crypto conferences and talking about their portfolio, right? Like that's what a lot of, I call those showboaters. And then two, there's the VCs that actually add value, but they only invest in a couple companies a year because they can't add value to all of them, right? So it's a really small amount of companies they get to invest in. And we accelerators used to be like that, but they all started trying to compete with each other, and the YC the same way around. So they got two, and then because COVID happened, they got, everybody moved remote. And so they really weren't adding as much value as they used to either. And then three, there's the VCs that, they're younger VCs, they're maybe on their first fund or two, and then they act really irresponsible. And so when something happens, they crush the founders, they fire the CEO. I mean, my last company was torn apart because, VC comes in, and, it's really my fault for I actually one of the founders that always retained all control. I managed to control whatever I could. I had voting power, right? And unless you give someone power, they really can't mess with things. And it's one of those situations where I gave a VC power because, you know, I put them on the board, I started establishing a better board. And next thing you know, they really tear the company apart. They do everything they can to, you know, when because they see the market like we do. When they see a way to try to get themselves money back and or make themselves money, they just become selfish. And that's just human nature in many ways, but it can really destroy a company when, you know, a VC on one hand says, oh, we trust you, we're going to work with you. And then when, you know, you're going through a troubling time, the economy's going down, you know, your companies are blowing up left and right. I mean, we saw that tenfold because we were an accelerator, and the VC comes in and says, okay, well, I want to get my, you know, $100,000 back, $200,000 back. And so I'm going to burn this whole thing down to try to get my money back. And it really hurts a lot of people. And so you got to be careful, especially with first-time VCs, because they will and they can cause a lot of mayhem, a lot of chaos. And I learned the hard way. I mean, I preach this, but, you know, I learned the hard way of, you know, keeping your investors separate from your team. Don't let them interact with the team, because guess what? That's how you're going to end up with a coup. That's how you end up with all these situations where, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side. And if the team has that mentality, especially when you're going through this economy right now, where, you know, I don't know a CEO that hasn't done a layoff. Like, layoffs are just happening. It's just the nature of the beast. When you're in the peak bubble and it pops, you're going to have to do layoffs, and you lose a lot of trust from your people, because these young people today, you know, Gen Z, millennials, they haven't seen this before. They're, you know, Gen X and boomers, they know all about it. They've seen the Great Recession and all these other things that they've just lived through it. But you know, these young people, they don't know, and so to them, the olive branch that comes out, the person promising all these, you know, other things, saying, oh, we won't do these things, oh, no more layout, like, you know, it just doesn't exist. But it's going to cause chaos and mayhem. We saw that with Sam Altman. Poor Sam, you know, literally, you know, didn't do anything. I mean, it's really the fact he made a lot of people a lot of money. And as far as I know, I mean, he didn't invent AGI. I mean, it just, you know, and people on the board got like a little twisted and they got afraid. And the next thing you know, instead of talking to him, they just ran him out of business, right? And he won in the end because he'd made enough people enough money, and there was enough money on the investor side that they couldn't lose it, right? And it was a great product. I mean, we're seeing this with, you know, Chat GPT. There's that, what's it called? Midjourney. God, it's run on Discord. Amazing product. Just no funding needed at all, just running off of revenue, right? I think we're in the age now where people can focus on revenue-based businesses. I think that the VC era of Ubers and the unprofitable business models is over. I think that we actually live in a world now where we can find out ways to make profitable business models. AI is helping us with that. Whereas before, I mean, you know, we were just burning billions of dollars, and we saw the results. What happens when Uber runs out of VC funding, right? Okay, well, now Uber is $50 to go a couple blocks. It's $50 to deliver a burrito that's $4 or $5, right? Like, it's unsustainable. I mean, nobody wants to pay that. People don't want to live for those wages. And so it's just falling apart, right? I don't know when the last time, I don't know if y'all have Uber in Dubai, but in Texas,
Yeah, we have.
You know, if you want to go literally like a mile, it's $50, right? It doesn't make sense. I'm in Vietnam right now, and you know, their version of Uber is called Grab, and Grab is in Central Asia right now, and they're doing the same thing. They're just pumping money, and the company is losing money left and right. It's not making anyone money, but they're having to pump money in just to get it to where they believe is a sustainable way. But eventually, it's going to go to the same way. Like, you know, it just doesn't make sense. I'm paying $3 to go across the city, right, in a nice car, right? It's not sustainable. I did the same thing with Alibaba and what is it, Didi, Kuaidu, when I was in China. It was like $4, right? The prices are going to have to go up, right? Just, it's not possible.
Yeah, so they are claiming they are kind of doing diversification, you know, so they are not relying on one business model only. So this is why you see, and by the way, to your point, Uber actually acquired the biggest competition. It's called Kareem across the Middle East region. So it's actually, they are owned by Uber, and you know, these guys, they became like a super app. They do everything, you know, like it's not only taxis or you know, car hailing. It's also like groceries, food delivery, fintech. So it's like the concept of super app, and I think, yeah.
Like,
Sorry.
It's like WeChat in China.
And exactly, it's like WeChat, and like even Twitter or X now, even Elon Musk, he's thinking about having this concept of the super app, and even he wants people to upload their videos, their podcasts, everything to become on single platform. Because, and this is something I keep repeating, Andrew, it's a very crowded market, and if you cannot do kind of value adding, you're gonna end up with a situation like this. Now, before I jump on these business models, one thing, because you mentioned that, I know you did it also as well. So you mentioned the accelerators a couple of times. Now, accelerators in the US and in the West, usually, they were very common. Y Combinator is one of the famous, of course. Starting, I think, a couple of years back, we start to see these same concepts applied here in the region. But one thing that people, they don't find them fair is that, for example, I know for a fact, Y Combinator, I think they write a check of 100K, but they ask for 7 to 10% equity, and people
Yep.
find this not fair. Now, asking someone who did that, from your perspective, like, is that accelerator model still valid in 2024 and beyond, or also like it needs to have a reshuffle and revamp to make it more, I would say, attractable for both the people who fund these accelerators and for the founders?
Yeah, I think that it has to change. I mean, people will say that the deals I gave were unfair, right? They'll say Y Combinator. I think anyone that's been in the industry, like, you'll see like Sam Altman's and the successful CEOs, and you'll see people that have done this 2 or 3 times. They made a bunch of money, and they'll say, "Oh, accelerators aren't fair, and you shouldn't do this," right? But you can only say that from a position of having used it, done it, and made millions of dollars. And I think that's just a founder issue. Founders are never like, I've never done this once or seen it once. Founders are rarely, if ever, grateful for, it's just a personality difference for the investors that gave the money and for what done. And because I think founders believe that, you got your equity and you got your percentage, and then you kind of have to be on forever. I mean, some of the first companies I went through in our accelerator, that they literally still call me to this day. And if I don't give them extra value and I don't give them like 10 hours of time, I mean, they're pissed, and they're like, they see it as almost like you're chained to them forever, and they expect you to really be a part of the mission. I think the idea is that if you're a shareholder in some capacity, that you have to be involved in the company. And I think that there's so many angels and stuff that just prefer to be passive investors, and founders even preach be a passive investor, right? And they try to make it sound better than it is. But when they really need you, they call you, and they want that help, and they expect you to be there. And accelerators just today, they've grown so big. And if you run a small regional accelerator, you're going to do well. If you have to expand out, you got to compete. You got to be an SF, and you're competing with a YC. It's difficult because the accelerator model is not for companies and CEOs that have been CEOs for a while. But the problem is the Twitter sphere is everybody, right? So everybody wants to weigh in and do stuff. Accelerator is for you graduated from Caltech, whatever, right? And you're in a med tech company, and we're focused on med tech, and we're going to help you build this med tech business, or we're going to help you build this comp sci AI, right? Whatever, like wherever your industry and sector is, wherever your college, they're usually around a great college, and they recruit from there. But they're helping first time founders because they're bringing for one, as a mentor, we're helping those companies, helping the best mentors connect to the best companies, because you're not going to be the creepy guy walking around on college campus trying to find new people, right? And so I think that's a value prop still. But for founders that have already built companies and done this for years, and they've been in the industry for years, I don't think YC is as valuable. I don't think Accelerator is valuable. I mean, when we ran, we really found from years of working with founders that there's always something that founders need to be well-rounded on, and there's always like some rough edges. So even founders that have built companies and raised capital multiple times over always have some weak area. And we were able to usually pivot our program to help those founders get over that. But at the end of the day, a founder will be happy, excited, and love you for 2 months after graduation, and then 8 months later, if you're still not adding value, then they're going to hate you. And that's just, that's every accelerator. That's every investor. I don't know how to change that that dichotomy. Because if you go to China, you buy many places in the world, people are always like really, there's a gratitude for their investors, especially because there's a lot less capital deployment in these areas and availability compared to the US. And there's this kind of egocentric US Western philosophy on it. I don't know what it is. The founders just, they want you to provide value forever. And, as an accelerator, as a investor, VC, like if you invest in too many, you're not going to be able to do that. And so it naturally kind of either constrains the best investors have really constrained portfolios. They really are adding value to everybody they can, and they actually can't invest in more because they can't add value to more, right? And whereas the investors that are seen as the worst, even if they're deploying the most capital and they have some of the best returns, well, they're not as available, and they can't be. And the people that are available are venture associates or analysts that have no experience in tech. They don't know what they're doing. They're giving terrible advice. And so that's, the industry really hit that peak last year where everyone had a venture fund, their mother was in a venture fund and a venture associate, all this stuff. And everybody was preaching stuff because I think it happened because post-COVID, there were so many MBAs. I mean, I had Harvard, I had UT, I had, all these programs, Yale, just email and just giving out MBAs. We'll waive the GMATs, everything. You just pay the money. If you got the cash, we got the MBA. And so, I mean, many people in my industry in the tech side lost all respect for MBAs from that period of time. So anyone that had an MBA during COVID and kind of beyond, the programs became just cash businesses and, diploma mills. And sadly to say, that's just what it was. I mean, I got the emails. Literally, you got the money, we got the MBA, right? Like, oh, you want executive MBA? Don't worry, just send us the money, right? And I think that many people in high positions saw that, felt that, and we got those. And then all of a sudden, those became no value to us. And so that the market just became glutted with MBAs. So many MBAs, they were just pumping them out like candy during COVID. So then those MBAs, they couldn't get jobs on Wall Street. So they started, they went into tech, right? They started accelerators. They went and worked everywhere they could. Now they're all tech gurus, and now they all, are experts selling their courses, right? They're all kind of doing their thing. And I just think that we're in, we hit peak tech, peak MBA, right? And now it's time for a reset, right? I mean, people are getting tired of Harvard, getting tired of the Ivy Leagues, right? We really need to focus down on, what made us a great country, what made the economy work. And we need to get back to the basics, right? Of profitability, quality. And, not everyone can go to Harvard. Not everyone can be an MBA, right? Like it's, I guess you'd say that capitalism, we hit peak capitalism in a way. I hate to say that, where, everyone just became so profit oriented and so self indulgent and making money that we stopped adding value to the system. And when you stop adding value to the system, inflation happens, the economy sinks, right? And, we just have to have a mental reset of how do we add value. And I still don't think we're adding value. I think that AI is just has supplemented value in many ways. And, it's the enslavering of AI and machines. And, it's, there was a great podcast I was listening to last night. They were saying, humans are the slaves in the Amazon warehouse working 16-hour days, and AI is out making art. And AI is doing what we thought we'd be doing. We thought we would be the ones enslaving robots and putting them in the warehouses and making art. When in reality, AI is making better art than us.
That's funny enough, and I'm not sure if you have seen this also, Andrew, because you mentioned about how many MBAs we start to see, and people not related to tech who started to appear in the tech scene. Another thing that I noticed, and it's I don't know, lucky or unlucky for me. I think it's lucky because it allowed me to see things from different perspective. So because now the place where I am in, like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, like these countries are now emerging, I would say, hubs for technologies, and a lot of startups trying to get up from here. So what started to happen, all of a sudden, we start to see these people that came out of nowhere. And, sorry if I'm saying this, I'm not saying you are nothing, and everyone started to give advices and, became like, the analysts and people who became, and they start to talk even, what irritated me, and to your point, when if they stay in the field that they came from and they put their 2 cents, let's say, around things, all my respect. But all of a sudden you see people not related to tech and speaking about AI, and we can do the LLM. Hey, 1 second, like give me a break. Like, from where do you get this? And what they started to do, they started to build these communities that they're claiming that, hey, we can connect VCs to founders. And then they started to do all these meetups and events and all this. And at the end of the day, it's like, as like one of my friends, if he would listen to this episode, he would love this. It's a fugazi, like like it's nothing. It's just, we got these people who probably, as you said, during COVID they had nothing to do, so they had to go study something, and because they got the money, and they don't add value. They just, what they do shows. They purely do shows. And how much I see of these. The good news, it was peaked during 2023, the beginning 2 to 3 quarters. By the end of Q4, I start to see a decline of seeing these people, because I figured out that, because again, the region's still small, and people figured out, okay, it was something not real, right? So it was like a bubble where people claiming they understand the whole, startup thing. And I'm telling people, guys, like, it's not something you can grab it from one day. And this is why I want to ask you, Andrew, because you've done this a couple of times before. So when we talk about a startup, and you said like it should have, the profit generation and adding value, but to scale, and having, really significant revenue milestones, what do you think are the key factors that would contribute to success? And this is what actually would allow even people to come to them and say, hey, we're interested in your startup, we want you to scale, here's our money. So what do you think are these factors that they need to have?
I mean, I think today people look for a real path and actually legitimate projections to getting to profitability, and not just break even, but actually being a profitable business, right? And they want to see it faster than ever. They want to see it. I don't want to see 36 months to profitability. We want to see it. How can you use AI? How can you use this tech? What are you pitching me on? And how are you actually going to achieve that, right? And what have you done in the past projection wise? And have you actually achieved those projections? Because I think three things that we talked about just now, but we mentioned about the fugazis, right? I think crypto created this kind of crypto opened the gates for everyone to kind of come into tech and everybody to become an expert on something. I mean, crypto didn't really pan out. Those people needed jobs, and so they pivoted to something else. And it created this mentality in tech where everyone was chasing the coattails of the money. Like the money seemed to be over here, and so it's let's go over here to these mountains. Let's go to this. Let's go to that, right? And like you added was it Bitcoin, iced tea, and all these other things, right? And when that didn't pan out, the next thing was AI. And so there's so much quality going into AI, but it's actually it's a much higher level of entry. I mean, there's you really have to know your game. And I started taking new coding classes to pick up some of the AI coding languages, because it's just moving so fast, I can't keep up, right? And I have to become a better engineer. And it's just one of those things that if you're not that, you really can't pitch it. You can't sell it, because crypto, I mean, people could bullshit all day long, right? You can't do that in AI, right? I will say that as much as I spend maybe 2 hours a day on it, I still can't keep up. Like it is just moving so fast, right? And that's just part of that's the reality of how fast that the systems can improve and innovate now, is they're just beating humans. And so that's number two. And number three, I was just going to say that I think that to get to your point on milestones, right? One is the profitability side of everything there, but you have to be able to show that you can do something with the capital, and you have to have this. Not, I guess you say, you can't have the expectation that you're going to live on venture capital forever. It's almost like the companies that VCs kind of shied away from back a couple of years back, where here's my one round, here's how much I need, this is where we're going to get to profitability, and this is we can survive this and we can weather the storm, right? You're really looking at it as like a singular investment versus I'm expected to raise 4 or 5 rounds, right? You really have to be and raise capital every 6 to 8 months. That's just not seen as acceptable anymore. I mean, and investors, we're not looking for that. I'm looking for the company that that investors weren't looking for 4 or 5 years ago, which is, okay, great, you have this path, you have this trajectory, using all of this new technology today, you're able to get to this profitability faster, and you can innovate faster. And the money you might need would be to outpace your competition, not to keep you from going under, right? Because like investors became this lifeline of just calling for money constantly to keep the business afloat and make up for mistakes. And I think that the tolerance for that is not as high as it was, and so the tolerance for new founders is not very high. So we're there's a ton of CEOs that have started companies and have been successful and had failures, and we're at peak CEO. There's just too many CEOs out there, and so I think that if you want to be a CEO today and you want to start a business, I think it's gonna be very difficult. I think that it's just not going to be the same as it was. And I think that you're better off probably going and learning from a CEO, email them and say, hey, I want to be your chief of staff. I want to be your assistant. I want to be something in your company, and just work for them for, a year or 2 years. We're back to like when we're not the same age, but I grew up as an older millennial where you have to work years in a role, right? When I was in the military, you would spend years before you got promoted, right? Like, that's just how it was. There's this idea today with how fast startups are moving and the peak startup bubble, like, people are like, if I don't get a promotion every 3 to 6 months, I'm a failure. And that's just how people felt. Like, if I'm not the senior VP product manager at Amazon of 300 product managers, right? We saw that just totally flop. Amazon let go of all the product managers. People were making, 24 years old, $400,000. All of them got fired, right? Like, it was just, it's over. And so,
Yeah. Now, Andrew, like, I know that you had I would say, a story following what happened last year with Silicon Valley Bank. So can you like just share with us, how, you converted this hostile situation, I would say, to an opportunity?
Yeah. It's interesting. So right now we're, our company, Silicon Valley Bank, blew up, and, I was calling for going back to 2022, 2021, I saw the market coming down. I saw issues coming into the market, and I really pushed to make cuts. But when your revenue is going so high and everything is going so well, you're literally even if you have all the power in the world, it's an echo chamber, because everyone around you saying it's only going to go up. It's only going to go up. Your investors are pushing for higher growth, more growth, more growth. Take on more capital so you can grow more, right? And I honestly should have pushed back more. I really should have just made that stand, and then I should have hurt a lot of people's feelings by just saying, hey, we're not going to grow more. And that's the thing that founders should be doing. Be willing to fight tooth and nail today, because that market might not exist anymore. Your industry segment, you might be outcompeted, which is a challenge. So I know that's a big fear in everyone's mind. But two, when you see your customers changing, when you see dynamics changing in the market, you might have to have more capital to figure things out. And you can't be just operating off of just pure profit either. So like I know that's contrary to what I just said, but you have to be really cognizant of capital in the bank and how much you're raising, and just spending all that money on growth, because growth is expensive. To grow, the average cost of a salesperson, in all businesses have sales. It's just a fact, right? And so the average cost of a salesperson to train and build up is over $100,000. And you're not making money off. They're an investment. Same with any employee. They're an investment. You're not making money off of them until, like, usually, at least a year. I'd put it about 12 to 16 months is to get a real ROI out of any employee you hire, right? And so, this rapid scaling, rapid hire, rapid fire, you're actually just burning a ton of capital and a ton of time and a ton of, your investment in that. And you can only do that with significant VC. And when that closes up, you can't do it anymore. You got to really invest holistically. And so on our end, we grew way too fast. And by the time you get to a certain point where you can't even control growth anymore, and because layoffs become regulated, you can't just fire everybody. You can't do that. You have to do 60-day notices. You got to do severance packages. There's all these regulations around it that first-time founders don't know, right? Hell, even I wasn't aware of all of the regulations. Even new regulations came out during COVID. It just made it really difficult to scale a business down. And so by the time you're able to scale it down, you're looking at several months versus just overnight done. And if we'd done that, we would still be around in business. But the thing that became this, I think my big mistake was, everyone was pushing back. I kept saying, we tried to cut whatever we could. And so you end up with death by 1,000 cuts, where you're making cuts every couple of months. And then, your people, like we're supposed to be the highlight of the industry, right? Running an accelerator and everything else. And when you see that, investors just stop taking calls from startup founders, right? We saw that a lot in the end of Q3, Q4, where a lot of VCs just kind of shut up shop. They're just saying, hey, we're not taking any investments right now, or we're only looking for this. Like everybody really tightened their buttocks a lot. And so I think that, what happened on our end, right, was, investor comes in, people try to do stuff, and then you really don't see it coming until it's there, and then you really got to spend a lot of time winning back and rebuilding. And on our end, we had a massive portfolio of warrants, investments, and so now that's being sold through an investment bank, Peak Tech, and so we're selling like $1 billion worth of equities. It's not the best time to be selling right now, but either way, it's we're selling it, and we only owe like $5 million, but it's going to be a massive turnaround. The investors get some money back, but the challenge is, and what it turned into a positive, weird moment for employees and everyone else, is investors are limited to 1x liquidation. So they only get 1x out of it. And the rest of it goes to the employees and stockholders, of which, I'm 80%, my co-founders are, the rest of the chunk out of that and the other employees. So it actually ends up, in a place where, like I tell founders, based on your equity percentage, if you sell the company early on for 40 million, you're going to get like 30 million bucks because you own most of the company. If you sell it for 150 million later, you're still going to get around the same amount of money, usually because your dilution is so high. And so it's just really, it's more of a medal on your chest for what you did and how much money you made your investors versus how much you made yourself. And that's kind of where we are today, is that, I'm going to do everything I can to make my investors back money on it. But the people that ran the coup and they actually kind of screwed themselves out a little bit, because at the end of the day, the shareholders and employees will end up making as much money as they would have if we sold the company for a couple $100 million, probably, and versus some of the investors that screw the other investors over. But like I said, it's never a major movement or anything like this. It's one of those challenges of, it's usually a minority power. I mean, you saw in the same Alpha case, it was one guy that just kind of flipped everybody, and then everybody, of course, fixed it afterwards. And so, and same on our end, there's a handful of employees, an investor, and no matter how much protections you have in place, you really can't fix it. People try to move fast, and to live in the environment of Silicon Valley Bank just exploded. We're looking at other banks maybe exploding, startups are exploding, right? It was this massive, oh shit moment where I've been preaching it for a while. Some people have been preaching it, and then all of a sudden it happens, right? It's like when Wall Street. I can't even imagine when Wall Street crashed, in the Great Depression, but I got an ounce of that when that happened, because we saw it in tech where VCs were just shutting up shop. They were just closing down for a month, 2 months, and then that's it, right? And then you saw the rest of 2023 where, it just layoff after layoff after layoff, company bankruptcy after bankruptcy. I mean, there's about 600 companies went bankrupt last year, just massive. And, companies even with a significant, nest eggs where they could last for, a year, 2 years, and actually write it out. They just said, hey, we're going to close up and distribute the money because we can't compete anymore. Just, we are like, the only way we could have succeeded is if we raised, this X amount of money. And this is a big thing I've seen is, that they saw that the model just wasn't going to work. And so they said, hey, let's just close up shop. And so, on our end, we would probably still have had the business if I had pushed ahead of time, and a founder really think about this, and pitch.com did the right thing. Like if I'd done what pitch.com had done, which is, literally cut down 90% of the employees in Q4 of 2022 versus trying to save everybody and, try to balance it out and make all the numbers work. If I'd done that, plus I was tired. I'd been the CEO for 7 years through COVID, and being a CEO of CEOs is even harder, right? Where I'm literally having, my phone number is on blast for helping CEOs through their problems. I mean, I had a heart attack a couple years back because during COVID, for months, I was just helping companies stay in business. I mean, literally for about 3 months straight, I was nonstop on the phone 24/7, helping companies do layoffs, all the hard stuff they didn't know how to do, and how to figure out how to finagle their, push taxes off to keep enough capital to keep the lights on and make it through COVID. And then once there was a lot of grifters trying to cheat people out of their money for the COVID relief fund, things like that, and just not helping. And so we were doing it all for free. I mean, just literally on the phone with hundreds of companies, just doing whatever, right? And it took a toll on me, right? I'd already been through several years in the startup side. I put too much time in. I think that that's, I have to think that, I hate to be that guy that preaches that, 'cause I'm usually the hustle king of just telling people hustle, but I don't think it should be a pride thing anymore for founders to say, I don't pay myself anything, I don't take on capital, and I don't take care of my health. And I think there's been this massive swing the other way of founders that are going on wellness retreats every weekend, working 20-hour a week, 4-hour work week. Like, that's all bullshit, right? Sorry, I don't know if you can curse on your show, but that's BS, right? You still have to work very, very hard, but you don't need to work 120 hours a week, right? That's just not possible and sustainable for years. And so what you have to do is you have to, as a founder, think and about yourself. Because if you can't put your oxygen mask on first, you can't save the person next to you. And ultimately, that's, I would have had more energy. I mean, I've had a sabbatical year this year, and so I would have had more energy if I'd done the right thing in terms of what was wrong for others, but was right for me as a business leader, was cut down 2/3, did what Pitch.com did, and everything there. We'd still be in business today, right? But it would have been the hard thing, and at the time, it wasn't as respected. Pitch.com, they got tons of accolades for doing it because they're like that they managed to get to this point to do it. But at the height of everything growing, when everyone was really attacking and going after anyone that said the economy was going to go down, because everyone was so afraid, right? When there's this massive fear and panic around the economy going down, to be the one yelling fire, right? When there's a fire, people attack that person, and they're kind of so it might not even work then. I saw many founders and many CEOs who were saying, "Hey, this stuff's not going well," and people just going, "You're full of it," right? I mean, my own team would tell me that, right? And so I think that it's important to look at today and to learn from it, but also to know that the way things are going, just as a founder, you have to be critical of everything. You have to take care of yourself first. And we wouldn't have been in the scenario if I'd put myself first. If I'd paid myself first, I mean, in the last 2 months, I was paying, all my savings going to pay employees, right? And the reality, it's business. And, the loyalty you get from that is not very much, because if someone else comes in with some money, well, you can lose everything you got. You can lose your scalp even, right? If you don't have the capital to cover your own cost, to cover your own legal, and, at the end of the day, everyone's going to be like, and I'm not saying pay yourself $500,000, but don't do like I did, where you pay yourself, like $75K a year, bare living expenses in Austin, right? Or, first couple of years, I didn't pay myself anything so I could pay my employees. And I think that's, it wouldn't have been much more difficult at all to raise the extra money to pay myself more. I'm an engineer. And so I put so much time into, okay, how can I take this dollar and make it into $10, right? And so I'd rather, live on peanut butter and jelly and then to pay myself money than when I know I'm not going to live on peanut butter and jelly if I'm paying myself. I'm going to go eat sushi, right? That's just my fix is ice cream and sushi, right? So whereas, you kind of have this hustle mentality of you got to live on the floor and do like that. And Elon preaches it now, and everyone preaches it, right? But I just don't think that's as necessary anymore. I mean, it's necessary financially now because you can't live that expensive life in this new economy and with inflation. But as a founder, you just have to take care of yourself, physically, mentally, financially. And I've just seen so many founders in this last year lose everything because they didn't do that and they couldn't fight the coup. I mean, Sam Altman couldn't fight the coup. He's a billionaire, right? And so, and everyone thinks they can do better than you. Every single person that works for you, every single investor, until you give them the reins. You give them the reins for 3 days and they say, "Oh, I can't do this. This is not, I can't go raising money." And I tried doing that. When our stuff, I said, "Great, you've been a director here. You want to take over?" Right? For 3 days. No, I can't do it. Right? I don't have the capital to raise. Like I would just, you close it down. Right? Of course you don't know what it's like till you're in it. And until you're in it, you don't know, you have to put your own things. Like everyone can judge you from afar, right? But they can't sit in the seat and run a company and put their own money in and pay the bills themselves, especially when you're a company doing, $2 million a month, right? And you have $1 million plus in expenses. They can't cover that. And everybody thinks they want to until they have the reality of it, right? They think the CEO just makes decisions. 90% of it saying no, as Bezos said. 90% no, right? Because otherwise you would just go off the cliff. So
Yeah, that's
That was a
I
long
love.
way.
No. Yeah. You mentioned many things, but the one thing is about taking care of yourself. This is very important, underrated, and this is why I tell people don't follow blindly what you see here and there. There's a lot of fake things that we see, especially in the age of social media. About how you should be behaving, about work. I'm not saying you don't have to work hard. Of course, you have to work hard, but you don't have to kill yourself, right? So there's always a balance. Andrew, just as we are always almost close to the end, you mentioned AI a couple of times. So tell me, what are you currently doing, and how AI is playing a role with your current activities nowadays?
So one, I use AI in almost everything I do now. Probably 80% of my daily workload. I'm picking up some AI languages. I'm getting better at coding again as a CEO, and so I've spent this last almost a year now on sabbatical, living overseas, living on an island, kind of getting my health back, figuring things out where I want to be, and looking for my next big idea. And I've been looking in the AI sphere a lot, trying to figure out, okay, where can I find the niche that I can fit in, and where I can, as an engineer, add value, right? Because being just a CEO anymore isn't enough. You have to be a CEO that is also an engineer. That's I've always looked up to Elon. That's what you have to do. And so yeah, I've been improving my coding abilities to get really well at it, because that's where the competition is. And so yep, I'm working on like 2 projects right now. They're still under development. Nothing to be crazy excited about. One I'm really excited about, but it's not released yet, and I hate to be that person that says that. But and the other one is just getting into the AI side and figuring out where I can go with it as my coding ability gets better than to the next year. But I'm still enjoying my year off. It's my sabbatical year. I'm waiting for investments to get sold so I can get my money out of it. And then from there, I plan to use my own money to start another AI tech company, and using what I've learned this last year. And I would say it's difficult again, because I don't know if I touch fintech again. Fintech is just oversaturated and bloated. But I'm excited for that new opportunity in the AI sphere, to one, be an engineer leader, to learn and understand, and hopefully get good enough that I can actually lead a team of engineers. That's really important for me, because I hate to be that person that says that, because it makes me sound like I'm not as technical. I'm a highly technical person, but it's just so complex. And I'm excited because it's not the user interfaces that are complex. It's not the UI UX anymore. UI UX has become super easy. It's really kind of basic. When you're talking about Discord, Perplexity, ChatGPT, like, it's really simple now. There's nobody trying to make things beautiful to hide the bad features or the lack of tech anymore. It's really technical. And yeah, we're just back to that. Whether you're building rockets or you're engineering AI, it's an engineer's game. And I think that the users, the sales experience isn't what it used to be either. There's not as many people that are excited to do sales and jump on and buy stuff. They're actually buying products based on usage now, not just on. I think that's a really exciting thing that I guess to go into 2024 on, is that DocuSign, what is it, Zapier, and many others are moving to this price per sale model, versus making you sign up for contracts that go for years, because they just can't compete. It's just that was the model before, but I think the usage model is way better. I'm happy to pay more for usage than, so I'm not locked into some massive contract because some new competitor is going to launch next month and change the game.
Absolutely. Again, I saw it this morning where Zapier, they changed something that I wrote to them long time back. You should change your pricing model. And I wish like more of these. I'm a little bit fan of no-code tools as well. So I hope that they follow, because I don't want, as you said, I don't want to look myself. And like in SaaS, usually they put for you the yearly price, usually like 20-30% less than the monthly commitment. I don't want to be locked in. And this is why there is this huge debate now around like SaaS models. I'm not saying SaaS will go away. Of course not. It's like still a good model. Subscription is a valuable model, because I can pause it, stop it, resume it the moment I want it. This is why it make it very affordable, I would say. Not from money perspective, from I would say, convenience perspective. So
Yeah.
I'm with you on this point. Andrew, where we can follow all these progresses down the road. So where we can find more about you.
Twitter, Andrew Ryan ATX on Twitter. I never used Twitter till Elon bought it. Never in years. I wouldn't touch it. And now I'm on it, and my followers have increased by 300x in the last week. I've been engaging with, there's no other place you can literally engage with billionaires. I was just talking to Bill Ackman, CC Lonsdale, like just actively, and it's the best networking tool in the market right now. I mean, not to be a shill for Elon, right? Like, I really believe that Twitter is the place. I mean, living out on an island, just coding and learning things and reflecting, like it's a little lonely, especially when you're living in Asia. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, it's cheap, beautiful, everything, but it's lonely. And as soon as Elon took over Twitter, game changing. I talk to people. I've made so many new friends, networking. I mean, literally connect to people that are just, I never would have talked to in the real world because they live in such different spheres. And it's like Clubhousing. Clubhouse, early Clubhouse, not post Clubhouse. And so I'm excited for that. I mean, I'm meeting people in the Middle East even, right? And that I never would have met unless I traveled there, right? And so it's nice.
Yeah, but I wish if Elon do something to remove these. He talks about the bots. I'm not talking about the bots, about these people that they keep putting these silly, hookup tweets over there.
Oh, yeah. Almost every one of my post, I get at least 4 or 5 likes from one of those. And
yeah, the only guide you need to become, I don't know what. Like, oh man, like it's 2024. That doesn't. I'm not sure if someone clicked that, but
I don't think anyone does. But Elon, he's got a solution. He ran out of. There's a new. So he's forcing users in those markets in the Philippines, places where most of the bots exist, that all accounts have to pay $1 to tweet. So he's not going to move that to the U.S. To the U.S., it's doesn't exist there. But basically, if you're in these markets, and so he's testing it in the Philippines right now. I think it's Indonesia, the Philippines, where it's just going to kill the bot accounts, right? Because they have to pay $1 per month per bot account, have a credit card set up, and it's a unique name. It just kills the bots. It's a great idea. I mean, I want to take credit for it because I tweeted it at him, but I don't think he read it. I think he just came up with it on his own. And,
I'm happy. I'm happy with even people they were against changing the name from Twitter to X. I'm happy with the name. I have no problem. I can say my experience became much better. Like, I was not active, but I was there. But my experience became much better since he took over. I need to give him the credit. Of course, I don't agree with everything he does, but yes, the platform, especially when he introduced the subscription thing. Oh my God, my timeline became much cleaner, I would say. So I see things which are like really relevant to me, except here and there, people who put ads, but again, he introduced now the X Plus premium, which is, I'm thinking about it. Let's see. Anyway, I will make sure to put your handle.
I think it's worth it. So.
Yeah, so I'll make sure to put your
control over the timeline.
I'll put your Twitter handle or X handle in the show notes. Andrew, thank you very much for this very, very informative discussion today. I learned a lot, and we will be following your journey. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much for your time. And this is how we end each episode. So for the audience, if you are first time passing by here, I hope you liked what you listened to or you watched. So please subscribe and tell your friends and colleagues about the show. If you are one of the loyal fans, thank you for being loyal and thank you for all your messages. Keep them coming up. And I promise you, always trying to get the best discussions with the best people. So thank you for your loyalty, and we'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.